Good morning, Andrews Elementary, and happy Monday. I hope you had a fantastic weekend. Saturday was beautiful. Sunday, rainy. And today I think it's going to be rainy too, but that's okay. It's a new week. It's a math day, so make sure we work hard on that math work. A couple announcements for your parents. Packet and food distribution is at the high school today from 10 to 12, as always. And if you need just the paper packets, they're available at Andrews tonight from 5 to 6, so you can pick them up. I'll be helping distribute, so if you come, I will see you. I'll give you a distance wave, and it'll be nice to see your face. So I look forward to you picking up the packet. We're getting close to the end of the school year, so let's finish strong and keep working. If you remember, before the weekend, I read chapters 8 and 9, and the peach grew huge, okay? Now, the ants were charging people to come in and see the peach, and so they were making money. And James was locked up until the end of the day, where he had to go out after everybody left and clean up all the mess that they left. But if you remember, at the end of the last chapter that we read, he saw a hole at the bottom of the peach, and he was going to go check it out. So that's where we are. Now, I'm going to read chapters 10 and 11 today, because chapter 10 is only like 3 paragraphs long. So here we go. It was quite a large hole, the sort of thing an animal about the size of a fox might have made. James knelt down in front of it and poked his head and shoulders inside. He crawled in. He kept crawling. This isn't a hole, he thought excitedly. It's a tunnel. The tunnel was damp and murky, and all around him there were curious bittersweet smell of fresh peach. The floor was soggy under his knees, and the walls were wet and sticky, and the peach juice was dripping from the ceiling. James opened his mouth and caught some of it on his tongue. It tasted delicious. He was crawling uphill now, as though the tunnel were leading straight towards the very center of the gigantic fruit. Every few seconds he paused and took a bite out of the wall. The peach flesh was sweet and juicy and marvelously refreshing. He crawled on for several more yards, and then suddenly, bang! The top of his head bumped into something extremely hard, blocking his way. He glanced up. In front of him there was a solid wall that seemed at first as though if it were made of wood. He touched it with his fingers. It certainly felt like wood, except that it was very jagged and full of deep grooves. Good heavens, he said. I know what this is. I've come to the stone in the middle of the peach. Then he noticed that there was a small door cut into the face of the peach stone. He gave it a push. It swung open, and he crawled through it. And before they had time to glance up and see where he was, he heard a voice saying, "Look who's here!" And another one said, "We've been waiting for you." James stopped and stared at the speakers, his face white with horror. He started to stand up, but his knees were shaking so much that he had to sit down again on the floor. He glanced behind him, thinking he could bolt back into the tunnel the way he had come, but the doorway had disappeared. There now was only a solid brown wall behind him. Here's an illustration of him finding the door. Chapter 11. James' large, frightened eyes traveled slowly around the room. The creatures, some sitting on chairs, others leaning on a sofa, were all watching him intently. Creatures? Or were they insects? An insect is usually something rather small, and it is not. A grasshopper, for example, is an insect. So what would you call it if you saw a grasshopper as large as a dog? As large as a large dog? You could hardly call that an insect, could you? There was an old green grasshopper as large as a large dog sitting directly across the room from James now. And next to the old green grasshopper there was an enormous spider. And next to the spider there was a giant ladybird with 9 black spots on her scarlet shell. Each of the 3 were squatting upon a magnificent chair. On a sofa nearby, reclining comfortably in a curled-up position, there was a centipede and there was an earthworm. On the floor to the far corner there was something thick and white that looked as though it might be a silkworm, but it was sleeping soundly and nobody was paying any attention to it. Every one of these creatures were at least as big as James himself, and in the strange green light that shone down from somewhere in the ceiling they were absolutely terrifying to behold. "I'm hungry," the spider announced, suddenly staring at James. "I'm famished," the old green grasshopper said. "So am I," the ladybird cried. The centipede sat up a little straighter on the sofa. "Everyone's famished," he said. "We need food." See them all? 4 pairs of round black glassy eyes were all fixed upon James. The centipede made a wriggling movement at his body as if he were about to glide off the sofa, but he didn't. There was a long pause and a long silence. The spider, who happened to be a female spider, opened her mouth and ran a long black tongue delicately over her lips. "Aren't you hungry?" she asked suddenly, leaning forward and addressing herself to James. Poor James was backed up against the wall, shivering with fright and much too terrified to answer. "What's the matter with you?" the old green grasshopper asked. "You look positively ill." "He looks as though he's going to faint any second," the centipede said. "Oh my goodness, the poor thing," the ladybird cried. "I do believe he thinks we are going to eat him." There was a roar of laughter from all sides. "Oh dear," they said. "What an awful thought." "You mustn't be frightened," the ladybird said kindly. "We wouldn't dream of hurting you. You're one of us now. Didn't you know that? You're one of the crew. We're all in the same boat." "We've been waiting a long time, all day," said the old green grasshopper. "We thought you were never going to turn up. I'm glad you made it." "So cheer up, my boy, cheer up," the centipede said. "And meanwhile, I wish you'd come over here and give me a hand with these boots. It takes me hours to get them off all by myself." All right, friends, that's the end of chapter 11. So things are starting to get a little exciting in the book. He's met some giant insects living inside of the peach. I wonder what's going to happen next. Let's have a fantastic Monday. Remember, friends, if nobody told you they love you today, I love you all very much. Let's have a fantastic Monday.